can only imagine when that day comes.
Everyone, it's good to see each of you here today. We've come to Psalm 49. And as we've been going through the Psalter, it is evident to me anyway that, and I think it will be to you too as we do it, is that everything just about that you can encounter in life, the Psalms treats in some way or another. How does the man of God react to that? And so we'll jump off into the 49th Psalm. As we begin, let's have a word of prayer, please. Our Father, we thank Thee for this day, and we pray that as we're gathered here in this place, that what we say and what we do meets with Your approval, and that we reflect nobly upon the cause that we've embraced. Help us to recognize the significance of covenant, particularly with You. We pray that You would bless our sick and those that are coming to deal with the chronic problems and difficulties that go with this advanced age. Help them to be of good cheer and courageous, and help us all to realize that when we leave here, there's a better home. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. The superscription on this one is similar to, or it's a lot like many of the others. It's a psalm for the choir director for the sons of Korah. There were different musicians within the temple time, first and second temple both. And so this was one that they used. It is a unique composition in that it addresses the very often discussed theme, man and money. It's certainly applicable for the generation in which we live. The major emphasis is on encouraging godly people to make the Lord their supreme focus of devotion. It's not anti-money, but it's just a matter of prioritization. And so its major emphasis is then make God the center. Make that the supreme object of devotion. It's a song in wisdom literature, if you will. You notice that there's a similarity between this one and Psalm 37 that we've already studied. And the answer to the question, why do the wicked prosper? You know, we look around and people, a lot of times, they get upset and waste a lot of time saying, well, that isn't fair. And if I had the ability to do that, I would pay for the time and get on television or whatever platform that there are and tell everybody, life is not fair. It should be. It should be fair and equitable and opportunity. We as a nation say that we want to have equal opportunity, but everybody knows it's more equal for some folks than for others. And, the more cash you got, it talks. If you don't believe that, just look towards Austin. We don't have to look too far. You don't have to look to Washington. And so, that's just the way it is among men. And so we need to be sure that our focus is in the right direction. Why did the wicked prosper in Psalm 37? Is that their prosperity? The answer was there that it's only temporary. If they may not continue to be prosperous in this life, but when they leave here, how much of that stuff that they've accumulated are they going to leave here? So Mr. Bezos had a brilliant idea in coming up with Amazon, and he's, I don't know how many billion he's worth. He's got a boat that's big as a little town, and on and on and on you can go. And I'm not begrudging him, but I'm just saying, when he leaves this world, he's going to leave it just like he came in, without anything, just like you will, just like I will. And then it's all going to be a matter of character, how you were. And so prosperity here and now is only temporary, and it will not last. In Psalm 49, the answer to the same basic question is taken further. In Psalm 49, the reader is going to be urged to realize that riches cannot offer anything beyond this world. there's nobody going to get into the next world and say, do you know who I am? I was on in the Forbes list of the most, most wealthy. And I can just, I don't know how one of the Lord's angelic servants would respond to that, but it wouldn't be necessarily positive because it's not going to matter. So the inequities, the inequities of this life may never be fully understood during our earthly pilgrimage. I mean, if you understand it, I'll give you the rest of the time to come up here and explain it to the rest of us. Why it's as unfair as it is. I can't tell you that. Bringing the rich and the poor and the potentates and the paupers down to the same level, it takes place at death. Everybody dies. Everybody leaves here. And that's not necessarily seen as a negative thing. Was Paul terribly uptight about it? We looked at him last Sunday. He was at peace with it. And of course, as rough as his ministry had been, he couldn't have been very much to look at physically, because he'd been kicked from pillar to post and beat and starved and thrown in jail and all kinds of things that happened to him. But he always had a joy about him. He was concerned about the brethren, and he should be. We always should be concerned about one another. But I have fought a good fight. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Henceforth there is a crown of righteousness which is laid up for me by the righteous judge, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. So that's where he was. In this life, if we can come to the realization that riches do not go with us beyond our death, and realize that fact, then our tendency to trust in riches is rebuked by that fact, really. And our attitude toward them are going to come into a more proper focus. I love to see good, honorable people do very well in this world. But I'm thinking of a young man in Honduras that he got plugged in pretty well politically. He wasn't but about 30 years old. He was a member of the government, the parliament, however they have their government arranged. But guess what his devotion to the Lord's cause was like? They got in that big money. You said, well, that's a poor country. Yeah, it's poor for most everybody, but not some of them. Not the government. And so the brethren just kind of shook their heads. So we don't see him anymore. He's not among us anymore. He doesn't, he didn't need the brethren anymore, he thought. Well, there again, what's going to happen to whatever he's gained when he leaves here? It's going to stay right here. So the instructions given in this psalm help to clarify the nature of money, what it actually does for us, and the importance of a balanced understanding toward it. I've seen other people come into wealth and do a lot of good with it. Lots and lots of good. We have that brother in Honduras that goes down there, church group, and falls in love with the people. And, next thing you know, I don't know, nobody but him would think of this. Can't help everybody, I'm going to help somebody. And I've told you about him. He goes and buys a coffee farm and hires all members of the church to work on it. Builds a church building out there right central between 3 or 4 little villages and what have you. And that'll stay after he's gone. And he set it up like a cooperative, and they're all working together. And so if the farm prospers, they prosper. And, it's been really a boom to that whole area. And with that, he's gone in and made contributions to the school and what have you. And, nobody much knows his name. He's not doing it for that. We get around him a little bit. Herschel met him. And you get around him just a little bit, and you know that he's just not into putting himself in the spotlight, and he knows that those things are temporary. He's old enough that he knows he's looking at the other side. He wants to do good. I say, let him. You agree with that? God has blessed him. I mean, blessed him. Everything that guy touches does well. He just incredible. This psalm, coming back to the psalm, can be divided into 3 parts. There's a brief introduction stressing what he's going to do with the psalm, verses 1 to 4. He's going to make an affirmation concerning the tragedy of relying on physical wealth, verses 5 through 12. And then he's going to talk about the future of those who trust in material wealth, verses 13 through 20. You know, I just thought about that in the comparison of people. Andy Dooley and I were down at MD Anderson one time. I don't remember who we were visiting. We were standing out there in the lobby getting arrangements made to go and see the person we were there to see. And, you know, I remember a stretch limo pulled up, and a guy wearing Arabic dress gets out, some kind of high Saudi official, and, of course, he's got cancer. Well, with all the money he's got behind him, just that fact is not going to make him any more apt to recover than the next guy, is it? I mean, you know, they're all in the same boat together, is what I'm saying. Everybody's in the same boat together. Well, we are all time, aren't we? Verses 1 to 4, hear this, all people. Give ear, all inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth will speak wisdom, and the meditation of my heart will be understanding. I will incline my ear to a proverb. I will express my riddle on the harp. If David wrote it, he was a musician, but there were others. The sons of Korah were musicians as well. Come back to verse 1. All people of earth are called upon to listen, since they have to deal with this problem under discussion. Everybody's got to deal with it. Everybody needs to come to grips with it. Doesn't do any good to run and act like it's not going to come to you, because I'm telling you it will. And so he begins, hear this, all peoples, give ear, all inhabitants of the world. So the total range of the earth's population is urged to take to heart what he's about to tell them, what he's going to share with them. And the instruction in song is directed to everybody, not just to the nation of Israel, as is the case in most of the Psalms. But on this one, he calls out to everybody. And the word world, that's translated world here, has to do with time and transitory things, the goings on. Anyone in this world is subject to the frail nature of this world's existence. A little over a year ago, the last thing we expected to do was get a call and somebody to tell us that our 14-year-old grandson was dead. You know, you can't get ready for that. And you can't get over it. Hope you don't ever get faced with it. But I'm saying we cannot just assume I've got lots of time. The time to render obedience to the Lord, the time to make the decision to walk in the light as He is in the light is now. Key here, now. Verse 2, all social levels. Every economic strata is included among those that are addressed, both high and low, rich, poor. In Hebrew, there are 2 different pairs of words used for the groups of mankind. I didn't get to study Hebrew, so I'm not going to try to pronounce those words. They apparently, though, these words are describing 2 different stations of life, and they're parallel to one another. The rich and the poor. The first pair describes plain, ordinary folks, and the second pictures the more elite folks. Most translators render the Hebrew phrase both low and rich, as the New American Standard Bible does. Whether a person has riches in abundance or not enough money to buy daily bread, he is asked to receive the admonition that this psalm gives. And this wider outlook is necessary because the topic will relate to humanity in general. In verse 3, he says, "My mouth will speak wisdom, and the meditation of my heart will be understanding." He's dispensing wisdom, as is indicated in verse 4, where he commits himself to personally following what he's saying. Because he didn't get that, that's not something that he dreamed up. This message is coming from the Lord. And so he's going to follow it too. And he will be the Spirit's agent in making known this wisdom to everyone, sharing it with everybody. And through his mind, we'll be given divine guidance about money. And from his heart will come clear understanding on how money is to be understood. And the Holy Spirit is going to use the meditation or the observations of his heart to reveal the truth that's contained in this psalm. Well, if it's a message through this man, but ultimately from God, how ought we to respond to it? We need to pay attention. We need to listen to it. Verse 4, thus the writer includes himself among those who've got to listen to what's being said. "I will incline my ear to a proverb. I will express my riddle on the harp." And so he stresses the importance of his theme by using 4 words to describe the lesson he wants to impart. This is translated in the New American Standard as wisdom and understanding and proverb and riddle. These words have basically the same meaning as in the context, with only really shades of difference. And he's just trying to hit it on all cylinders, if you will. He's just trying to cover it all and stressing, boom, 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 boom. It takes 4 words, saying basically the same thing. And that's to put a focus on what he's saying. The other 2 terms lean more toward how this teaching will be conveyed. It will be a proverb, that's a comparison, and concerning the riddle, and a riddle isn't just an enigma, of how riches and godly living go together. So he's going to compare and he's going to address the riddle. The writer says that he will give special attention to this message. He will incline his ear. People kind of like it if the guy that's preaching and teaching it makes a good effort to do what he's telling everybody else to do. Are y'all like that? I mean, most people are like that. At least try. Thankfully they're not members of the church, very seldom. But when one of these guys is put up on TV of having done some egregious thing, and he's got a big following, and he's supposed to be a super Christian, and what have you, that just makes you hang your head in disbelief. And so he's going to incline his own ear, and he's going to take his own advice, because it's not his advice, it's the Lord's advice. And he's going to bend over to be able to hear the message clearly and completely and thoughtfully, making sure that he doesn't miss any of it. He's saying, in effect, I realize that I must carefully consider this matter. I urge you, my readers, to go with me on this journey, to follow me in this, is what he's trying to communicate. And so his presentation is going to be made in the form of a song on a harp, so that we can easily meditate on it and remember it. Jesus, he didn't teach so much in songs, but he taught a lot of times in what? Stories, wasn't it? Parables and stories. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but you can remember a lot more stuff that comes to you in the form of a story than almost any other form. Well, what is a song? It is a lyrical story. And people can pick that up. They can remember it. And if, like in a poem or a song, if it's got a rhythm and a beat and what have you, that's easy to remember. You know, you wouldn't sing along with me. Well, some of you are beyond the age of knowing rock and roll of the 70s, 80s, 60s. I can go back to the 60s on some. And so, but a lot of us in here could sing along with those lyrics, because that was the music of our youth. So he says he's going to give special attention. He's going to pay attention. He's going to listen to these thoughts, and he's going to present it in a way that's going to be easy to remember. And then he comes in, verses 5 through 9, and starts hitting the limitations on money. I look at one limitation on it, and it's man created, but you try to lay up a little bit, and the government keeps printing fake money and spending it. And what does that do to your money's buying power? Do you know? And you actually may be making more, quote more, but in terms of what they've inflated and thrown away, they're taking money right out of your pocket. I remember when President Carter, and I think he was a good man, but he had a hard time with the economy. But he made one speech, and I'll never forget it because he's kind of getting on to the people. Well, who can create inflation? The guy with the printing press. That's the only person that can. Am I right? I've got a couple of bankers here. The only guy that can create inflation is the one that's printing the money. And he's just printing more money than they got anything to back it up with. It's legal for him to do it. I don't know why, because if you do it, what do they call that? You're a counterfeiter. You go to the federal pen for doing that. Well, how about let's just put everybody in the federal pen that does that and have some honest money. Ooh, wouldn't that be an idea? Anyway, verses 5 through 9. Why should I fear in the days of adversity? When the iniquity of my foes surrounds me, even those who trust in their wealth and boast in the abundance of their riches. No man can by any means redeem his brother or give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of his soul is costly, and he should cease trying forever, that he should live on eternally, that he should not undergo decay. Just forget that. That's what he's saying. Because human efforts are not going to be able to do that. So, it doesn't matter how much money you got. In verse 5, poor people, when in the presence of rich and powerful folks, if they ever are in their presence, may find themselves fearful, possessed of fear. Because you just really don't know how to react. As one of them, as one of those rich, powerful people, the writer exhorts himself to refuse to be, and I said rich, powerful, one of the just regular folks, he tells them to refuse to be intimidated. Why should I fear in the days of adversity when the iniquity of my foes surrounds me? So as he encourages his own heart, he refers to the persecutors near him as iniquity at my heels. And when he sees prosperous, ungodly people afflicting the righteous in order to gain more riches, then he refuses to fret, for he knows that soon their wealth's going to slip out of their hands. Those financial crises and what have you, thankfully it doesn't happen often, but can it happen? See, it happened in 1929, big time, didn't it? Like to happen in 2008. And so, we slid by that one barely. In verse 6, death and time are going to bring the rich man down to a lifeless body deteriorating in the grave, just like the poor man. Indeed, those who trust in their wealth and boast in their the abundance of their riches will be humbled. And as surely as one puts his faith and hope in what he has, the physical things that he has, he's going to be disappointed. Death will realign a person's misplaced trust. And the rich man may put in his treasures the same confidence the godly man puts in God. However, the stark implication is that this mistake is going to come back to haunt him. Money makes the worst master. And it's fleeting and it's deceitful. And if I could convince people, just don't put your ultimate trust on, don't let your weight come down on it. I don't know why studying this psalm made me think of one time we were in El Salvador, and one of the brothers was a groundskeeper and what have you in a big fancy, not a big fancy, a little fancy subdivision. There was estates there. Beautiful. I never remember, and so he'd gotten permission for all of us to go to the beach. And they had a little gazebo down there on the very end, and we could go in that one, but don't go anywhere else. And so we get up to the gate, and there's, of course, armed guards there. And they had an old school bus to travel in, and that guard said, "You're not taking that in there." And so we had to get out and walk, which didn't hurt anybody. But I just saw some, just the terrible disparity at the time in that country. And I just thought, what's going to happen someday to all that stuff, even before the Lord comes, or even before death strikes, if they all the just regular folks rise up and say, that's enough, then what are they going to do? You think that hired gun's going to stay there and take a round or whatever for those people? He's going to come out of that uniform in flight. He's going to be leaving the country. Well, again, moral of the story is don't put your trust in it, because it can change like that. Death and time is going to bring everybody to the same place. And, the godly man puts his trust in God. And so he's going to be fine. But that other fellow that puts his trust in his material possession, that's going to come back to haunt him. In verse 7, the sheer observation of what's going on around us indicates that material wealth, money, is limited in what it can do. It is. A little thought will cause us to conclude that no man can by any means redeem his brother or give to God a ransom for him. I remember when my mother-in-law was in her last days and everybody was gathered there. Remember Grandpa said, if it's necessary, I'd sell that ranch for her. Now, you got to understand, this is a guy that's put 70 years of work in that. And nobody doubted that he would have done it in a heartbeat if it had been able to stop what was in process, but wasn't. And he's never been a guy to trust stuff, but that's the only thing he could give is ransom. We can't ransom anybody in that way, can we? And it doesn't matter what you have. And so the psalmist wants us, the Lord through him wants us to know that and to just be circumspect and be careful about where you put your priorities. Because material things, material wealth is just limited in what it can do. A type of redemption is referred to in the Old Testament. For example, the firstborn son was redeemed by 5 shekels of silver. That's Numbers chapter 3, verse 42 through 51. But some things can't be ransomed. Cannot be ransomed. There's nothing we can do. And so through his death, Jesus, our Savior, made it possible for the sinner to be redeemed from the guilt of sin But one cannot reclaim another from the clutches of death with his money. And I've been with a lot of people in the past 40 years that were having to say goodbye to somebody very dear to them. And every one of them, because these Christian people almost most of the time, would have given anything to be able to redeem the one they love. We can't do that in the physical world, and we can't do it in the spiritual world. Jesus made that available. But in terms of the physical world, all will one day pass from this life. And the rich man may brag about the goods that he's laid up for later use. He may brag about that. Nevertheless, with all of that boasting, those riches cannot redeem that person or anybody else from death. We put up some vegetables and what have you. I don't know if that makes us preppers, but there are some people that really get off into that. They're going to have stuff that lasts for years and everything in case the zombie apocalypse takes place. But what do you think is going to happen to all that stuff if all your starving neighbors know you have it? We better pray to the good Lord that we don't ever get in that kind of situation. Let's don't even go there. Let's continue the work that we do and walk in the light ourselves, put our trust in God, and call on other people to do so. Because everybody goes to the dark valley. And what did David say? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Verse 8, some things are just so costly that they cannot be material possessions. Just don't do it. For the redemption of his soul is costly, and he should cease from trying forever to redeem his soul, is what he's about. A person might as well quit trying to eliminate death, because that's not going to happen until Jesus comes back, and then he'll throw it all into the pit. But all of a man's efforts in the physical world cannot change the fact that he too will make his exit from this life. Hebrews 9 verse 27, what does it say? It is what? Appointed unto man once to, and after this the judgment. Verse 9, the rich man may strain every muscle, stack up all his resources, that he may live on eternally, that he may not undergo decay. But all that labor's expended in vain, isn't it? The grim reaper makes its way into luxurious mansions of the rich, even as it enters the smallest cottage or the cardboard shelters that some people live in. I've seen that. Death does not respect any person's position, doesn't respect their pocketbook, or any person's popularity. The end of life cannot be bought off, it cannot be laughed off, it cannot be ignored, and it can't be chased away. And so the appointment with that end is one of life's inevitabilities. So if you can't go around it, what can you do? Well, you can live for the Lord, is what you can do. I don't know how long it took, but when they executed Brother Paul, and he woke up with God's people, with the saints of old, people that he'd respected all his life. He'd been a Jewish rabbi before he was converted to Christianity. It would have been really interesting to hear the discussion between him and Moses, the great lawgiver. Because Paul had studied that law all his life prior to coming into the church. He wasn't sweating it because he was prepared for it. We can all make preparation. He comes in verses 10 through 13 and hits again that, listen, folks, money's only temporary. For he sees that even wise men die. The stupid and the senseless alike perish. and they leave their wealth to others. Their inner thought is that their houses are forever and their dwelling places to all generations. They have called their lands after their own names, but man in his pomp will not endure. He's like the beast that perish. This is the way of those who are foolish, and of those after them who approve their words. Selah. Think about it. That's what he's saying. Everybody's moving towards the cemetery. And that doesn't necessarily need to bring us down. If a person is prepared, there's a better place. My Uncle Whitley used to always, in his prayers, he was an elder in church for a long time, and he talked about entrance into that upper and better kingdom. There's a better place to be. And no tears, no sorrows, no temptations. Verse 10, all are moving towards that cemetery, and anyone alert to the realities of life is aware of that fact. The observant man sees that even wise men die, and the stupid and the senseless alike perish and leave their wealth. The wise men, men who are conscious of the truth about physical life, and the stupid, you don't say that word much in Scripture, the ones who refuse instruction and wisdom, and the senseless, those who see themselves as being above rebuke, people you can't tell anything, they will all descend to the grave, and they will leave what they've accumulated, all of them. I think about a lot of people that are rich and that are popular. Have you noticed in the past months how many people that are not 50 years old that are in entertainment and what have you died? Just start paying attention to that. I don't know, man. I'm thinking, I don't believe I want none of that, whatever it is. I don't know what they're drinking, smoking, or shooting, but it's taking a lot of them out of here at a young age. What a tragedy. A lot of them at a time that ought to be the prime of their life. And they're gone. What is the mortality rate of human beings? Do you know what the rate is? 100%. It's just a medical fact. They did a study on it, I'm sure, somewhere, and they came to the conclusion that everybody leaves out. Everybody. Every day, death comes to somebody. And someday, he's going to come to everybody. The most wealthy man in the world is going to leave his money behind, and when he makes his exit, that's where it's going to stay. And in this regard, the wealthiest and the most successful are no better than the most foolish and the biggest failures, just in that regard. And, people, the wealthy man's friends may put some of his trinkets and his treasured possessions in his tomb with him. In ancient times they did that. You'll sometimes unearth these tombs, and there's this fabulous wealth there because they believed he's going to use it on the other side. Well, if a grave robber hadn't gotten to it, where is it going to be when you open it up? Right there where he left it. Right there where he left it. The Egyptian pharaohs come to mind. Fabulous, fabulous wealth. They left it, and it's going to... Well, a lot of them had been robbed, and some now are sitting in museums, but it didn't do him any good. And so, I'll go there. Verse 11. However, a financially successful man may look beyond these facts and brag about what he has, the name he's made for himself. The writer says their inner thought is that their houses are forever and their dwelling places to all generations. And so the imprudent wealthy people, now not all wealthy people are that way, but the imprudent wealthy people may vainly envision living forever. I'd mentioned a couple of these billionaires. Some of them, I don't know what they're getting shot up with. but they don't even look like they did before they got all that money. So I don't know what they're using. But they can use all that they want to, and time's going to run out. Clock's going to run out. They've called their lands after their own names, he says. When they do not think of death, they may say to themselves, the houses I built will last. Well, Rome or Greece, you could go to Athens, Greece, and see the Parthenon, and it's pretty impressive, but it's also got pieces falling off of it. You know, it was built to last forever, but it's not going to. What's happening to the poor old Sphinx in Egypt? Well, he's getting sandblasted all these years, and so the thing's has been, you know, as always has been, is showing signs of deterioration. And it's made out of, you know, stone. And so even those things, there's houses in a little place called Dunoon, Scotland. It's, I believe, in the Firth of Clyde, or the Firth of Forth, one of the two. But on that little town, remember a lady saying something about, you're talking about, that's over where some of the new houses are. And it's new houses, because I hadn't seen a new house. You see, they're only about 100, 150 years old. I said, well, how old are the old houses? She said, between 500 and 700 years old. People have been there a long time, by our standards. The little stone houses with slate roof, and if something doesn't shake it down, it'll be there when the Lord comes back, probably. But the people that built it are where? They're in eternity, long time ago. And so it doesn't matter how successful you are, you have to deal with that reality. And so people, as I've said, store up possessions and wealth, and they spend and they live luxuriously here. That's no skin off of me, by the way. If a guy gets his money honest, what does it hurt me if he decides he wants to buy, I don't know, a high-dollar car or whatever? Should we get together and go take it away from him just because he was successful? So there are people that think you ought to penalize success. As long as he's not stepping on me and violating my rights, then it doesn't matter. I don't care. I do care if he puts his trust in those things. That's a completely different thing. But if he's able to provide things for his family and what have you that's beyond what I can do, I had the same opportunity to compete. Well, not really, but kind of, sort of, that he did, right? And so you can set up to whining. What good does that do? Doesn't do any good. And so people, they can sometimes get blown up about what they own, what they've done, but they're going to leave it all behind when at last their bodies enter into the narrow grave that they borrow until the reaper comes. What they did on the earth is soon going to be forgotten. Their names will probably fade from people's memories. I mean, you know, how many people here know who Euripides is? Or Thucydides? Or Sosthenes? And those were philosophers and what have you that you know, students are assigned to read all these years later, but nobody knows who they are. I remember being out in Webster County, Mississippi, deer hunting with a couple of friends of mine, one of the big old Cherokee, and we walked up on a cemetery. Well, I mean, with nice marble stones and what have you. And they were born and raised. The other two boys I was with, right in that area, they had no idea that it was there. I suppose somebody in the county knew it was there, but I'm just saying that they didn't know. They didn't know who the names were or any of that. Why? Because that's the nature of this life. That's just what the psalmist said. In verse 12, the absolute truth is that nobody, no human, is going to perpetually remain on the earth. But the man in his pomp will not endure, he said. He's like the beast that perished. A man who does not realize that he was born to pass, he's born to die, has not faced the truth about life. Human beings, from one viewpoint, are like the beast of the field in the forest. All living creatures, including people, expire at some time. 70, and if by reason of strength 10 more. That pretty well winds it up. A mere casual evaluation of the nature of things, the nature of living beings, brings us to this realization. And so that ought to make a man question, well, is there more beyond this place? Is this the end of it, or is there more beyond? There is more beyond. There's someone beyond waiting on you. And see, it ought to order the way we live our lives, shouldn't it? Some of the choices that we make, some of the entertainment that we choose, some of the way that we conduct ourselves. If there is really a beyond where God is, and He's going to judge everybody based on the handbook that He left, then I need to know that, don't I? And I need to conduct my life in accord with that. So anyone that doesn't recognize the terminal nature of this body is unwise and foolish. If I make it a few more days, I'll be 69 years old. A lot of you are way older than that. Thanks for the reminder. Don't mention it, But it's at a time where we're going to the terminal point. It's just the way it is. But you know what? I've heard older people say this. One old brother said one time, he's got to where there's a lot more people I know on the other side than I do on this one. And he was a faithful Christian. He was confident. He wasn't worried. He's ready to go. Miss Bobby is doing better. But I can tell you when she went down there were certain things she wasn't going to do. And said, I'm not going to do it. I am ready to go. If God is ready for me, I'm ready to meet Him. And so she's central to that family. There's a bunch of those kinfolks. And she's central to it. And the Lord needs her here for a little while longer, I guess. We celebrate that, but I'm not sure she is. Well, he tells us this is the way of those who are foolish, if they think or don't think about it, and of those who approve of their words after. He says, think about that. Selah. Verses 14 and 15 we won't probably be able to get to, but as I'll read it, as sheep they are appointed for Sheol. Death shall be their shepherd, and the upright shall rule over them in the morning, and their form shall be for Sheol to consume, so that they have no habitation. But God will redeem my soul from the power of Sheol, for He will receive me. Selah. Think about that. And of course, his implication is, think about it and go with me. Let's go together. Let's make sure that while we conduct ourselves, that when we meet Him, it'll be a happy meeting. It will be for the righteous, won't it? That's going to be a good day. Although the verse is difficult, verse 14, to translate it, it pictures death like a shepherd watching over us, observing us, waiting for the proper time to visit us. And as sheep, they're appointed for Sheol. Death shall be their shepherd, peering over everybody's shoulder at all times is that shepherd. And one by one, all human beings will be led by the great shepherd, the great superintendent of the grave, and their bodies will be kept by this overseer until God's appointed time, the resurrection. And the good news is that the righteous will triumph in the time of God's choosing. That's the good news. We'll do just a little bit more with that, Lord willing, next Sunday. and then we'll go to Psalm 50. And I hope you'll be here.